Staying in contact. I'm London Mitchell. Seems we cannot attend any event where someone does not bring up the topic of what a divided country we are, politically, religiously, socially. At lunch the other day with my friend Anthony Knopps, we bandied about the idea that the media may be a major contributor to our divisiveness. Anthony is a media consultant and professor of communication and political science at Adrian College. So, when reading or listening or watching, how do we determine truth from fiction? How do we know what we are taking in is accurate?
Well, I think it just comes down to the basic communication process. What we deal with as citizens of this planet, we're not honest with each other, and B, we're not honest with ourselves. The average person blatantly lies to someone else, and these are not my numbers. These are statistics that are out there. Roughly 2 times a day, we lie to somebody else. We lie to ourselves far more than that. Sometimes in double figures. And when you look at that from the foundational sense, what do you believe? How do you get there? The best advice that I give to clients is don't get stuck in your own bubble. When you only listen to this particular outlet or that particular outlet or read this particular paper, you're only getting a specific point of view. And that's just it's been this way since we wrote notes on stones and on cave walls. There's always been misinformation out there. The challenge is for us as consumers of this to be more aware that it's out there and to take pieces of content and then evaluate it ourselves. One exercise that I do with clients and also do with students is I tell them to pick one random story that's out there. It could be, the latest challenge in Venezuela, for example. And I say, okay, pick me a story from CNN, a story from ABC, a story from Fox, a story from MSNBC, a story from the National Review. Read me the first paragraph of each of those stories. Are they the same? Well, no, they're not. Well, why not? Well, it's because each of these outlets are coming to this from a particular point of view, and some of that is by design. Some of that is based on algorithms and research and all those things that, well, the computer told us to do this, or the consultant told us to do this, and that's not entirely fair to the audience. So the audience has a responsibility as much as the outlet that's putting that information out there.
This 24-hour news cycle requires you to be updating and always be trying to get the scoop on the other guys. So you really don't have the time while you're hunting for a new lead to a story or new information. You don't have the time to really spend on a story to get into the weeds, to use the common vernacular, to really understand the ramifications of a story.
Right, and that's particularly true. And what's easier to generate in terms of content? Is it easier to generate facts, or is it easier to generate opinions? And we all know the answer to that. It's much easier to generate opinions because then you can just share whatever you want, whenever you want. And that's a issue that's popped up in recent years, where the audience is not entirely and the outlet is not entirely being honest with the audience about where facts stop and where opinions begin. And as a result, the audience becomes conditioned to, well, I saw this on the evening cable outlet, therefore it must be true. Well, a lot of times that's just opinion, and that is the problem that we're dealing with. And it's not just here either. I mean, in the last decade or so, 78 countries have passed laws designed to limit the spread of false or misleading information, and a lot of that is uh, an effort to improve transparency and accountability on the content creator side. But more importantly, and I think this is where we can make a difference. Um, some of these laws have also focused on increasing media and digital literacy among the citizenry. And we tend to forget that just because we don't agree with something, that doesn't make it fake news. There are, if 1+1 is 2, and we decide that 1+1 is 2, we just can't make it 3 because we feel like it. And I think we're getting to a point where my truth is stronger than your truth, and that's a very dangerous path to put us on. And like I said, it's not just here in the United States; it's around the world as well.
When I was in journalism school, we were taught sit on the fence all the time. But that's not getting necessarily MSNBC or Fox News the ratings they want. They need to pretty much cut out their piece of the pie, so to speak, to get those ratings.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, the old adage: if the facts are on your side, argue the facts. If the facts are not on your side, argue emotion. Uh, in some cases, that's true, but I get back to the point that the audience needs to discern the difference between opinion-based content and fact-based content. And when outlets commingle the two, some of it by design, some of it by chance, but that's where the problem lies. When you deal with content, and it's hard to define what prohibited content is, what fake content is, and laws designed to fix this problem are sometimes they make it worse. I mean, we talk about cases designed to limit the spread or false or misleading information. They're too vague. They leave it up to the discretion of lawmakers, which, depending on who's in power, can make a huge problem. And this really gets down to a larger case, and that is an issue of national security. What do you do if you are a practicing journalist and you want to tell the truth, but there are laws prohibiting the coverage and the publication of certain content because the government doesn't want it published? Where does that stop? That's a big problem. And in authoritarian states, it can pose a real threat for independent media. So you have to have, and this comes down to anything, but what does it mean? You have to have a holistic approach. You have to not just educate the audience. You have to educate the content creator. And I use content creator deliberately because not everybody pushing out content today is a quote unquote journalist. There are people that have a cell phone that push out content. There are influencers, for lack of a better word, and what do they want? And then you also have lawmakers, and you have the challenge with creating laws to regulate these things is it can be even worse. You know, the laws on the books can you be used to arrest citizens and journalists for publishing or sharing what the state determines is false information, and that's a slippery slope. And last year, the Committee to Protect Journalists, which is sort of a watchdog agency for this, said that almost 400 reporters were imprisoned around the world in 2022. And a lot of these people are being imprisoned based on laws that are designed to limit the freedom of expression. And particularly when you have those in power saying that, the freedom of the press is an antiquated idea. And it's not just in the United States, it's around the world. The consequences of that are huge. And that's why we have to start with one thing. And the first thing we need to start with is media literacy, being aware of what's going on. Because in most of these cases, if you looked at surveys ranking, believability and trust and, whatever, journalists, quote, are just above dog catcher, so they're in the bottom tier of these things. And that more than anything else is the larger trend that we need to be aware of.
How did that happen, Anthony? How did it happen that at one time we believed in Walter Cronkite? He was considered the most trusted man in America. How is that a journalist, the profession of being a journalist, has fallen so low?
Well, if you remember, during those times, there were basically three outlets where people got their evening news: ABC, CBS, NBC, and then they got their morning paper. And something you spoke to earlier, the challenge of getting the information out there. The problem is when you have a 24-hour or a nonstop news cycle, you don't have time to craft, to get the extra piece. You're in essence reporting live all the time. And when you report live all the time, you have a responsibility to, and also the content creators have, or the people that you are interviewing have a responsibility to provide you with accurate information. And that is not always the case. And it may not be their fault. It may just be they don't have a full and complete accounting of what's going on in real time. And the way the modern audience is, and we deal with this with our communication students, and I also deal with this with my clients, is when you are in an environment where the audience is demanding, in a lot of cases, information before it even exists, how can you be accurate with, the first draft of history is often wrong. And you have to, sometimes you do have to take a step back. And I ask my students, is it better to be first and wrong or second and right? And that's usually, a 50-50 split, because they realize, because that's how they consume information, that if you're not first, you're irrelevant. And the audience assumes that everything is wrong. So what do you do? And the challenge that we have today, on both sides of the coin, from the content creators to the content recipients, is to ask for increased accountability from both. The audience needs to settle down and wait for stories to be fully developed. But that That's the challenge. When everything, our attention span shifts every 7 seconds, that's hard. And the content creators have a responsibility to go, wait, we don't know all of the information yet. When we have it, we'll bring it to you. And we don't have that.
We have been chatting with media consultant and professor of communication and political science, Anthony Knopps. Some heavy and candid discussion about us and the media and how we need to challenge ourselves to do the best we can to ensure the information we receive is accurate. I want to thank Anthony for his insight. I'm London Mitchell, inviting you to join us again next week as we continue staying in contact.